Saints fans and who that's from all over the world, this is Kyle T. Mosley here with the Bayou Blitz. I have the host of the most, my good friend, Mr. Bob Rose, with us tonight. What's going on, Bob?
Not a lot, Mr. Mosley. I hope you and your family are doing well. Viewers that are tuning in with us on this lovely Wednesday evening, I hope you and your families are doing very well also. Hope you're staying healthy, hope you're staying smart, and hope you're staying happy.
Yeah, stay happy. We have a lot to be happy about going into the bye week. And I think a lot of people need to get off the Crescent City connection. It's okay. Come on down. It's okay. We're going to do well in the Bayou. But we have a good guest tonight, guys. If you guys do not know about covering the New Orleans Saints, this guy does it no better than any. I followed him for many a year myself, but also he's someone that a lot of the journalists who cover the New Orleans Saints have looked up to for such a long time. He's a four-time Louisiana Sports Writers Association Columnist of the Year. He also has 2 Pulitzer Prizes, and that was due to the coverage of Hurricane Katrina. But most of all, Jeff, he is a Hall of Fame voter, and I got to pick his brain about how these guys do it. So let's welcome to the show tonight, Mr. Jeff Duncan. How you doing, Jeff?
Hey, guys, I'm doing great, man. Thanks for the invitation tonight. Look forward to the chat.
Oh, man. Look forward to having you. Thank you so much. It's an honor. You know, Bob and I have a long list, and you are at the top, and thank you.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. Look, it's amazing to me, the reach of the New Orleans Saints. You know, when I took the job in 2000 at the Times-Picayune and covering the team, I had no idea that the Saints were this popular. And it's hit me, obviously, in 2 decades to see the reach of the team and how the organization has grown in popularity, the perception of the organization. You know, fans like yourselves, what make my job great, because you know, I know that there's so much interest and passion about the team, so I feel very fortunate to be in the position I've been in.
Yeah. You've done such a good job also covering the team, but writing books, and you're now on your 3rd book covering the New Orleans Saints, and this one is a really popular one. Your new book is about Payton and Brees, the men who built the greatest offense in NFL history. We're going to talk a little bit about that. After we need to talk about what's happening with the current state of the New Orleans Saints, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, fire away. We talk about anything. Everything's on the table.
Oh, okay.
Wide open, man.
Hey, look, I don't know how much Sean Payton would agree with that, but let's see what we can do. Well, Jeff, this morning in The Athletic, if you guys don't know, Jeff writes for The Athletic. He used to be the former columnist for the Times-Picayune before moving over to The Athletic. And you had a very intriguing piece on Michael Thomas. It looks like the Saints have grown a little bit frustrated of Thomas. A lot of fans were kind of concerned this past summer with some of the commentary he had on social media, but it looks like it's a little bit deeper than that. Tell us what's going on with Michael Thomas and the Saints.
Well, Kyle, I mean, Michael Thomas, I'm sure anybody that follows the team closely, if you follow him on social media, you know, look, he's a complicated personality. I think that's a good way to describe him. What has made him such a great player is that competitive drive, that fiery personality. It's driven him to the top of the profession. I mean, people forget he wasn't even a first-round draft pick. It's kind of amazing. And I think he's always had a chip on his shoulder, a lot like Drew Brees. You know, Drew Brees wasn't a first-round draft pick. He used that as motivational fuel to get to where he's at in his career. And I think those two are kindred spirits in a lot of ways in that regard. But their personalities are obviously completely different. But Michael Thomas sometimes is his own worst enemy. I think he tends to invent enemies sometimes. It's what drives him. I call it jousting windmills. You know, you're looking for, you know, an enemy behind every tree, and sometimes they're not there, but it's also what makes him great. It's why he's gotten to where he's at. It's why he's so competitive. and why he's been able to be such a dominant player. And I think sometimes that's crossed over. It's transcended. He's become a little too confident, if you will, away from the field. He's been difficult to deal with internally. And then what bubbled over this past weekend really, I think, crossed the line. He got into a fight with a teammate. And look, fights happen. I've covered a bunch of them. I've seen them a lot. But it's the way it was handled after that internally. Just did not meet the standards that the Saints expect in their players, especially a team leader like Michael Thomas, and it had to be addressed. And I think it's been addressed by the team leaders, by Sean Payton, Mickey Loomis, and I really don't think it's going to be an issue going forward. This team handles things like this very well. It's a mature team. It's got a lot of strong leadership, and I don't think it's going to be any kind of lingering issue that anybody has to worry about.
Well, I heard the Don Quixote reference there, chasing the windmills. Do you believe that do you think the pressure of being the top receiver or trying to be the top at all times has really gotten to him? The pressure of trying to be the elite guy, because remember when he first came in, he was very quiet, reserved type of individual. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't know. I don't know if Mike Thomas has, his drive to be, an all-timer, and he certainly is on the path to do that. I think he's on path to be a Hall of Famer. If he continues at this rate, he certainly is going to be in the Hall of Fame. I think this is a guy that's just wired differently than everyone else. It's one of the reasons why he's been so great. So it's a very delicate situation internally for the staff, because they don't want to, they don't want to stomp on something that has led him to be such a great player. They want players to be individuals. They want them to have personal freedom. So it's a delicate balance that Sean Payton has to, a tightrope he has to walk as the head coach, of having a player have personal freedom, individuality, but also conform within the team and the rules and the guidelines that they have in place for a team. And Sean Payton refers to coaching sometimes. He uses this analogy. I think it's a Bill Parcells analogy. He calls it, gardening. It's like gardening. You have to do it every day. You have to spend a little time tending the garden. If you don't do it every day, it gets out of hand. I think that's all they're doing right now with Mike Thomas, is tending to the garden, making sure this doesn't mushroom into something bigger down the line.
Yeah.
And Jeff, you make a great point, and thank you so much again for joining us. But you make a great point about situations like this potentially mushrooming into something much, much bigger. And we have seen, to name drop just a few players like Terrell Owens, Jalen Ramsey, Aqib Talib, Keyshawn Johnson, who Sean Payton, I believe, coached in Dallas, and of course is Michael Thomas's uncle. Is this kind of situation anything? Could it approach anything along those levels, or does the relationship between Coach Payton and Michael Thomas just too strong for that to happen?
I think it's too early to tell. I don't think it will get to that point, just because of the confidence I have and the knowledge I have in how Sean Payton operates. He was a communications major. It's one of the strengths of his coaching style. He's a great communicator. You talk to anybody in the building, they will tell you that. And he comes from the Parcells school, and that is to confront issues, get them out on the table. Don't let them linger in the dark. Don't let something be unsaid. He wants it all out there. If it's bad, let's get through it together. And I think that's something that's already begun. I know he's already talked to Mike Thomas. Drew Brees told us the other night, all the team leaders have talked to him. So I think this team is uniquely built with such strong leaders. I mean, Demario Davis, Cam Jordan. I mean, you can go down the list. This team has so many good leaders on it, veteran players, that I don't think something like this will reach the point of some of those other teams you talked about, just because I think it's too strong.
Right. In years past, Jeff, you see teams who would have some sort of controversy early on in the season, kind of have it to galvanize them to be able to come together, band together, and become winners, right? And I know the Saints early on this season, even going into offseason, starting off with Drew Brees' untimely comments, these guys have had issue after issue after issue to be able to handle. Do you think it's going to head in the right direction for the team, or we're still kind of saying it's too early to tell?
No, here's the thing. I think, look, I've covered the team for 20 years now. The thing that's changed dramatically is the amount of media attention devoted to covering the NFL in general. The Saints certainly have, exploded in the number of people covering the team. And then you throw in the element that, of social media that has been around for a little over a decade and really maybe 15 years total. That's changed. And so that's something that this would have happened when the Saints, when I first started covering the team back when Jim Haslett and Randy Mueller were running the team, it would have been a blip on the radar screen. It would not have even been a factor. It probably would have been kept in-house. But today, everything ends up on social media, and Sean Payton understands this very well. They've got a great sense of how to nip these things in the bud and communicate, like I said, with the player directly and kind of keep the wagon circled, if you will. They don't let outside situations affect the team. They do a really good job of that. And I think, I mentioned it in my column. That's one of the things that's frustrated the Saints brain trust a little bit with Mike Thomas is, as you all know, anybody that follows him, I mean, he's a social media addict. He's all over social media. A lot of, millennials, younger generation, that's how they, it's part of their lives. It's a very big part of their lives. And I think that is an adjustment that the Saints are having to deal with that maybe Sean Payton didn't when he got in the league 20 years ago. How do we deal with this? We saw it mushroom, you mentioned, with the Drew Brees situation. All of a sudden, you've got all these teammates going to social media and communicating with the public without going to Drew Brees first. That's not how the Saints want to handle those things. And I don't think it's how they're going to handle this situation particularly.
Okay. Bob.
Jeff, you talked me down off of the ledge. Like I said, when I first heard the story, I just thought to myself, okay, these are just two teammates getting into a fight. Two ultra competitive guys in Gardner Johnson and Thomas. And you certainly alluded to that too. But then, like I had mentioned before, in the back of my mind, all the former stars that we had just talked about, the situation is just exploding out of control. I am glad to hear that the Saints, core of leaders, and certainly Michael Thomas is among them. Really took it up with the player, and hopefully that this team and all parties involved are ready to move on. But tell us, before we move on to the next subject, how is Thomas's relationship with the defensive backs on that team? We heard that there's been issues with Gardner Johnson in the past. He and Marshawn Lattimore have gotten into it on the football field a little bit. Just trash talking kind of stuff. Is it just that? Is it just a couple of competitors that are really going at each other, or is there something more to that?
No, that's all it is. I mean, C.J. Gardner Johnson's probably the most competitive guy outwardly on the team, other than Mike Thomas. That I see. He's an emotional guy. DJ Swearinger's the exact same way. It doesn't surprise me at all that those three ended up in a little bit of a fracas. I mean, and this stuff happens all the time. I've seen it throughout my career. I mean, Will Smith would get into a fight with a teammate routinely. I mean, he was a chippy guy. He'd give you the shoulder walking back to the huddle, just to let you know he's there. It's just a competitive edge that a lot of these guys play with, and sometimes it boils over. And look, you got 53 guys in a locker room, more than that now with the practice squad. Not everybody's going to get along. Not everybody's going to be best buddies. Offense and defense, truthfully, they hardly spend any time together anyway. I mean, they're in a team meeting early in the day, then they all go off in their separate position groups. I don't think people quite understand how teams are aligned. They spend a lot of time on their own, these guys. And the only time they're really together is on the practice field, going against each other, preparing for a game plan, and then in a team meeting, and then sometimes in weightlifting and conditioning sessions. So it doesn't surprise me that two teammates might not get along and something would boil over on the field, because these things happen, I think, more frequently than people realize.
Yeah. That can happen in the press room as well, right?
Yeah, it can happen in any walk of life, any business you're in. And I just think that in today's world, like I keep mentioning, in the social media, the 24/7 coverage, there's just so many outlets covering the NFL. It's such a Goliath that these things tend to seem bigger than they are, just because they get so many headlines and get so much currency and traction. When internally, if you talk to the parties involved, they kind of get a kick out of how big it seems on the outside, when internally it's already been addressed and they're moved on.
Right. Well, let's talk about the book. So your first couple of books, you had Tales from the Saints Sideline, and you had From Bags to Riches, right? And
Right.
Now the greatest offense in the history of the NFL. Tell us, how did you get to this point? What intrigued you or compelled you to be able to write this?
Well, look, I've covered these guys. These guys being Sean Payton and Drew Brees, their whole tenure here. I've been fascinated by their partnership. I think it's a unique situation. The fact that you've got a head coach that played quarterback paired with Drew Brees, one of the greatest quarterbacks, if not the greatest quarterback in NFL history. This has never happened before, guys. You've never seen a quarterback with a head coach that played a position, at least not at this level. I mean, Dan Marino and Don Shula. Don Shula never played quarterback. Chuck Noll didn't play quarterback. Vince Lombardi did, and we can go down the list. Bill Walsh. It's never happened. So it's fascinating to me to see their partnership, how it's blossomed, how it's evolved, how it's endured. I mean, we're going on year 15. This is year 15. They've kept this offense ahead of the game, ahead of the defenses, which is very hard to do. I covered Mike McCarthy early in his tenure in New Orleans. He ends up in Green Bay, and it went south on him there. He had to move on. The message got old. His relationship with Aaron Rodgers, frayed. That hasn't happened here. It happened to Andy Reid in Philadelphia. We know how great a coach Andy Reid is. He had to move on and go to another spot. It hasn't happened here. It's very unique that they've been able to endure this together and really not have any issues on the field or off the field. And
Right.
I think it's been now over a decade since Drew Brees and Sean Payton had their books after the Super Bowl championship, and a lot has happened since then. I mean, there's been over a decade. Drew Brees has become the NFL passing king. We've seen a roller coaster ride with Sean Payton's tenure. So there's just so much there to document that I felt like a book was warranted. And also, I can't deny, I mean, we're coming to the end of Drew Brees' tenure. And I just felt like somebody needed to kind of make an argument, not only for this offense, but also for Drew Brees and Sean Payton and their place in the history books.
When you were doing your research, were there any elements about the book that I know you don't want to share everything. You want us to be able to get to it and buy it and crack it open. But anything intriguing about what you've learned through your research, the data, and knowing these players and coach?
Well, I think what people who read the book will find most fascinating, at least to me, it was the most interesting part, was just the process, kind of how the sausage is made in a given week for a given game plan. I don't think people are quite understanding or even appreciative of just how much work goes into a game in the NFL, how much time, energy, resources, mental capacity is put in to a Saints game plan in particular. Other teams don't do it the same way the Saints do it. They are much more complex, much more sophisticated. They spend more time and attention to detail. It's one of the reasons they've been so successful, but it takes a lot of man hours to put together that game plan. I'll give you an example. Joe Lombardi, of course, the quarterback's coach here, has been here all this time. He went to Detroit, was the was the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions under Jim Caldwell, a very good head coach. They were very successful. But Jim Caldwell kind of kept things simple. He coached with the Indianapolis Colts. They wanted to do things a very simple way. So his game plan, he wanted the run game in by like 9 a.m. that morning on a Tuesday leading up to a Sunday game. And he wanted the passing game plan in by 4 o'clock. That's how he operated. Well, here in New Orleans, the Saints don't even get done with the running game till about 4 or 5 o'clock on a Tuesday. And then the passing game sometimes will take them all the way through the night on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. Sometimes it carries over into Wednesday night. That's how much time and how much attention to detail and how much grinding they put into a game plan here in New Orleans to get their players in the best position to be successful. And so I think the process was the most fascinating thing to me. And I think it's a big reason why the Saints are so successful. And I think the reason they're able to do it that way is because they've been together for 15 years. They being Payton Brees, Pete Carmichael, the offensive coordinator, CJ Curtis Johnson's been here almost the entire time, and so is Joe Lombardi. So they have a huge, vast resource of offense here that they can unleash in a given game and call on those on that archive of plays that other teams just don't have. And it's one of the reasons why new players that come into the system, like we've seen this year with Emmanuel Sanders, we saw it last year with Jared Cook, it takes them a while. Even veteran players, because there's so much here that it's difficult for them to process it all and then take it onto the field on Sundays and be able to be effective and successful. Because the way they describe it, Sean Payton and Drew Brees are at PhD level with this offense. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when newcomers come in here, they're at Saints football 101. It takes them a while to catch up.
Right. Bob.
Hey, Jeff, I want to come back to your point in a minute about a newcomer and how quickly they can or can't be expected to adjust to the Saints offense. But first, you mentioned Pete Carmichael, and Kyle and I say almost week after week that Coach Carmichael does not get enough credit for the success of this offense. And we know that Coach Payton is the czar, and this is his baby, of course. But how much input does Coach Carmichael and Coach CJ? How much input do they truly have in the offense, or is this all Payton Brees?
Well, it's a good question. I think it's a very collaborative effort. That's another thing that's unique to the Saints. I think their entire offensive staff is involved in the game plan. Dan Rochar, the offensive line coach, Brendan Nugent, the assistant offensive line coach, they're all in there putting together the run game. Tight end Dan Campbell, tight ends coach Dan Campbell, he's heavily involved. It's a collaborative process. They want all the ideas out there. And what works for the Saints is because of someone like Pete Carmichael, who's been involved in the offense for so long, he has a huge role. There's no doubt about it. I think one of the key roles for Pete, though, is just being a kind of a buffer between Sean and Drew. They're both kind of mad geniuses in a lot of ways. They're each on their own kind of wavelength. And then Pete kind of deals with both of them. He's kind of the liaison in a lot of ways. He can deal with Sean's impulsiveness and some of his idiosyncrasies as a head coach. And then Drew is this very regimented, routine-oriented guy. He doesn't like to get thrown off of his game plan, if you will, during the week. And Pete appreciates that. So he knows how to deal with each of them on their own level. And I don't think it would be nearly as successful here if they didn't have someone like Pete Carmichael, who's kind of a reserved personality, a guy that doesn't seek the limelight, doesn't need his ego stroked. He understands how important he is. People value him internally in the building, and that's good enough for him. And it's one of the reasons why this whole thing has been so successful is you have, glue guys, if you will, like Pete Carmichael in the building.
Right. Sometimes you need that person to be the bridge, right? It's the calming voice in the room, so to speak. Do you think Pete Carmichael will ever get that shot at being a head coach?
I don't know. It almost feels like the ship has sailed, doesn't it? He had a bunch of interviews before, and it's kind of dried up a little bit as far as his interest in head coaching positions. I don't know if Pete ultimately cares anymore. I mean, he's so happy here. He's got, a big family. They've been rooted here for a long time. I think he enjoys the stability. All these coaches, I think, understand how unique it is to be in one spot in the NFL as long as they have. It's just unheard of, guys. No, it doesn't happen anywhere else. This unique stability that they've enjoyed. So I don't think he's out seeking another job. If somebody comes calling, and they have to have success, there's no doubt. I really believe the Saints need to get back to a Super Bowl. I mean, obviously they want to win it. But once you get in that game, it's a 50-50 affair for the most part. You got to play well. You got to be prepared. But I think getting back to the Super Bowl is so important, not only for Drew Brees and Sean Payton's legacy, but everybody in that building, guys like Dan Campbell and Pete Carmichael that could be head coaches around the league. They've got to get that stage, I think, to get their names out.
Right. You mentioned get back to the Super Bowl. Of course, that's on the minds of all the people in the Who Dat Nation. I grew up in New Orleans, and I saw the legacy of losing before the legacy of winning, right? And I understand how, and I appreciate the win for Super Bowl 44. A lot of the younger people nowadays don't understand how tough it is to get to where these guys were able to get to and win a ring. Now, here's my question. Over the 10 years since Super Bowl 44, we have many good offenses that have been in place, but not so great defenses. Do you believe there was more an emphasis on the offense and they did not pay attention to the defense? Because I can name at least 3 or 4 seasons where if we had a better defense, the offense would have helped us win a Super Bowl as well. But the defense complementing the offense was kind of suspect.
Yeah, you're not alone in that thinking, I don't think. I know a lot of Saints fans feel exactly the same way. Look, they lost their way there for a little while. I mean, everybody to use a Sean Payton phrase, everybody had dirty hands, right? When they let Greg Williams go, who I think was easily the best defense coordinator that I've ever covered here, and I think the players that played for him would tell you the same thing. But when that kind of relationship with Sean Payton and the staff went sour, they struggled to replace him, and they kind of wandered the desert with the defense. I tell Saints fans all the time, they tend to remember those players that played in that period after Greg Williams through the Spagnuolo and Rob Ryan days. There were a lot of good players here that did not play well here that went on and played well in other places, and there's a reason for that. They were not being used properly. Malcolm Jenkins is a good example. Akeem Hicks is a good example. We've seen a number of players. There was talent here on the defense. It was not being coordinated properly. And I think Sean Payton had a hand in that. They switched defensive schemes for a while. They went from, the Rob Ryan was going to have a 3-4. Then they changed the Seattle defense, and Rob Ryan had never coached in that system before. I mean, it was a mess back then. And it really hurt this team when they had some really dominant offenses there for a while. But I think now they probably got the best, system in place right now defensively, and the best coaching staff they've had on the defensive side of the ball since that Greg Williams period. They've got a really good staff. They've got their hands full right now getting coordinated. They haven't played as well as I know that they want to early on this year. But I do think Dennis Allen and this staff is probably the best fit that Sean Payton's had. And the most talent too, since they've had the Super Bowl team.
Bob,
Jeff, you've talked over and over again through your tenure covering the New Orleans Saints about how such a good fit and a rare fit that Sean Payton and Drew Brees is. And viewers, if you're just tuning in, Jeff, we're joined by Jeff Duncan, who has written his 3rd book on the New Orleans Saints, Payton and Brees, the men who built the greatest offense in NFL history. My question to you, Jeff, is everybody knows Drew Brees' side of things on how things came about and how he joined the New Orleans Saints. But talk to us a little bit about the Sean Payton side of things. Payton had just accepted his first head coaching job of his career with the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, the Saints were coming out of Katrina. Payton had his own ideals for what kind of offense he wanted to implement, but now he needed a quarterback to do it. Was Drew Brees his first choice all along, or who was among the short list?
Well, that's a really good question, because I don't think people understand just how serendipitous it was, the union of Sean Payton and Drew Brees. I mean, if you remember back then, guys, The Saints brought in Payton. No one really knew who Sean Payton was. I mean, he was kind of a little bit of a unknown commodity at the time. You have to credit Mickey Loomis for hiring him. The Saints' other prospects then, if you look back at it, were not, headliners, certainly not of the caliber of talent that Sean Payton is. And their first priority was to address the quarterback position, I think, because Sean Payton played quarterback. He understood how important that position is. I've used this quote a number of times from Sean Payton because I think it's a great quote about the value of playing quarterback. He compares it to, a pilot on a plane. He said, everyone in the organization gets on the plane, but the quarterback's the one that's flying the plane. And he can either land the organization and the team safely, or he can fly it to the side of a mountain. And that's how important that position is. So he understood that they had to get that position fixed. He did not believe that Aaron Brooks was a good fit for his system and his offense. So they were ready to move on from Aaron Brooks. But at the time, Drew Brees' situation in San Diego, he was still committed to the Chargers. And the Chargers had not moved on from him at the time. So they were looking at the NFL draft. Matt Leinart was going to be high on their draft board. They were going to probably select him, and they were interested in bringing in Josh McCown. How about that, guys? I mean, he was going to be the bridge quarterback to Matt Leinart. So they would have had a completely different story here if that would have played out. If the Chargers had not moved on and elected to go with Phillip Rivers and cut Drew Brees, and if for some reason the Miami Dolphins would have had a little more conviction and put together a better financial package and believed in Drew Brees, I really believe that's where he would have ended up in free agency. But I really think, and I wrote about this in the book, that this was the first time, looking back on it, that we saw the brilliance of Sean Payton, his intuition to go after Drew Brees, to understand that this guy would fit his system, and then to have the chops to go get him and recruit him and to outbid Nick Saban, a legendary coach who had a lot more to sell down in Miami, an 8-8 team that's really one step away from the playoffs, a gorgeous location. I mean, here New Orleans is coming off Katrina, the biggest disaster in American history. The city's in full recovery. It's hard to sell that. There's not a history and tradition of winning here. But yet Sean Payton, despite having that deck stacked against him, goes into this recruiting battle and wins it to get Drew Brees. And I think looking back on it, it just showed you it's the same thing we see when he competes for players now in the draft. I mean, I wrote that story this year about Tommy Stevens, how he was not going to lose that kid in the draft. That's Sean Payton. It's what makes him great, that competitive edge to him that said, I'm going to get Drew Brees here, and the rest is history. If he didn't have that conviction back then and that intuition, I mean, this whole story would be different, and I wouldn't have a book out. I can tell you that.
Yeah. And think about this, man. What did he do to convince Mr. Benson to send the plane to go get Drew? That was the thing. I was like, wow, he had the owner to get this plane to send and get a player.
Well, I think it speaks to just how much they valued him, and that's kind of common for big time free agents. I mean, they will send a plane if they feel like it's somebody they really want to impress. The Miami Dolphins did that as well. It was an interesting courtship. Miami wined and dined Drew and Brittany just like the Saints did, but the Saints believed in him more. And I do think there was a little luck involved there. I mean, let's face it, the Saints could afford to roll the dice. They were coming off a 3-13 season. You had a new head coach there were no expectations. So they didn't have really much to lose. And if you look back at the contract, while they did put together a really attractive deal for Drew, there was an out clause after 1 year. So if this thing wasn't working out, if his shoulder was shot, they could walk away from it and not, be any the worse for wear, and they could move on. But the fact is, they had conviction in him and they believed in him. And I think that confidence in him spoke to Brees. He felt like the Saints really wanted him, whereas Miami, 8-8, they couldn't really take a chance on a guy. And all their doctors, I've learned this over the years, guys, medical doctors, they're always going to red flag it. There's nothing good for them by not red flagging you, because it's always going to come back on them if they did not, give a cautionary report. So all the doctors in Miami were like, look, if Drew Brees' shoulder blows out, I don't want to be the one that's blamed by Nick Saban. So they were very cautious. And I think Drew Brees sensed that, and he sensed he was wanted here. And it's like all of us, right? We've all had jobs that we've interviewed for, and somebody really wants you, it's more attractive to go there. And so you have to give them a lot of credit for having the intuition, but also the confidence in that he would be the guy to get through that shoulder injury.
That's awesome.
Yeah, 15 years later now, all that success, we are sitting on the cusp of looking at a new Saints quarterback. I don't think anybody wants to rush Mr. Brees out the door, but reality is reality. I have said for the last few years now that I don't believe that the next Saints quarterback is even currently in the NFL. But you pointed out, not only on the show tonight, but in your writings through The Athletic and certainly through your books, the Sean Payton's offense is so complex that we even see the skill position players take a while to pick it up. Do you see the Saints going hard after a quarterback in the draft to replace Brees, if assuming he does indeed step away at the end of the year, or do you see a veteran quarterback in kind of a bridge situation?
I think all options will be on the table. I don't think they've even crossed that bridge yet to decide. I mean, Taysom Hill's certainly going to be a candidate. I mean, he's going to be able. They're going to give him an opportunity to win that job. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. But I don't think they're going to hand it to him. They're going to have competition for it one day, and it could be a rookie that they really target, that they like in the draft, or it could be another quarterback in the league. I don't think they've thought it through. They're so busy trying to win another Super Bowl that it's premature for them to think that way. But look, I mean, they're always going to be in the quarterback business. That Sean Payton said that before. He means it. I mean, I wrote about this a few weeks ago, and you guys, I'm sure, picked up on it. It was a national report, but Tom Brady was going to be on the Saints. If Drew Brees retired, he'd be the quarterback of the Saints right now. I mean, it was a done deal. So it just shows you how they operate, right? They're always going to be looking to fill that position because they know how important it is. And I don't think they're going to be, knowing how Sean Payton's wired, I don't think he's going to be looking for someone just to get them through a couple of years. He wants to win every year. He always tells us, he gets on us when we talk about a window of opportunity. He just doesn't believe in that. He thinks every year is a window to win. That's why he's wired that way. So I think they'll have 2 or 3 options in addition to Taysom Hill. And I think there's a big part of Sean Payton that's intrigued by building this offense around a quarterback with Taysom Hill's skill set. The game has changed a lot in these 15 years that Sean's been here. It's a much more athletic game. Quarterbacks have to be mobile. They have to get around. They have to move around the pocket. Sean talks about it all the time. It's never a perfect pocket anymore. I mean, it's a muddy pocket. We saw it from Justin Herbert the other night. Very athletic quarterback who made plays, getting outside containment, throwing across his body downfield. I mean, Justin Herbert would be a great fit in the Saints offense. Mm-hmm. I think that's intriguing to Sean. To take what he's got and to tailor it to a quarterback with a different skill set. And he's got one in the building right now that I know he's intrigued by, but I don't think he's completely married to just one player. He's going to have multiple prospects when Drew Brees does leave.
Yeah, especially after I read some accounts by Arthur Blank that he's not totally committed to Matt Ryan as well. That will be interesting to see Matt Ryan if he is available, or even if the Saints do approach him in case Drew does retire. Then you heard the cases where people talk about Matthew Stafford. But like you said, the game has changed and evolved. That's why the Saints really wanted Patrick Mahomes in the draft, and they were not able to land him. But I think when you look at what's happening out there in today's NFL, we had some really good talent. And what you saw from Herbert, God, I mean, we could go down the list. Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, look at what's happening. Derek Carr has resurrected his career, so to speak. So there's some great young talent that we have coming in to the league, and I think the league is going to be great since. But what about Jameis Winston? I mean, is he just going to be there as an insurance policy, Jeff, or do you think they're going to give him an opportunity to possibly come back and win a job in case Drew does retire?
I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for you. I really do. I don't get a sense of either way with Jameis Winston. I don't get a sense that they believe he could be the successor to Drew Brees, and I don't get the sense that they're ready to move on from him either. I don't know if they've got enough of a body of work to really make that kind of evaluation on him. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens if Drew were to say retire at the end of the season, which I think is likely, but not 100% by any means. But if he did move on, it would be an interesting situation to see if they would make Jameis Winston an offer. I do think it was interesting that the Saints did not make him the backup quarterback. They made Taysom Hill the backup quarterback. To me, that was noteworthy, that he was not like in the Teddy Bridgewater role. And if Drew were to go down, knock on wood, for an extended period of time, I think Taysom Hill would be the backup starting quarterback for the Saints right now. And that's certainly different than when Bridgewater was here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, let's talk about this. You talked about the Hall of Fame. You talked about the importance of having another win under these guys' belt. Let's say in a perfect world, the Saints do go ahead, go through all the controversy, and prevail and win Super Bowl 55. Do we see Brees riding off into the sunset like Shane? Or do we see him coming back for another year, one more time like Elway did? What's your thoughts?
Oh, I think if they won the Super Bowl, he would definitely retire. I think he's ready for a second career. I think he's ready to spend more time with his family. But he's so competitive. He's wired to succeed and to win. And I think he understands the game's place, the history of the game. And I think to walk out as a champion would be the perfect final chapter to his storybook career in the NFL. So I would be shocked if he came back if they won a Super Bowl. Just knowing how Drew's thinking, he's very healthy right now. He doesn't want to walk away where he's told me before. He doesn't want to be a guy that's kind of limping to the finish line. He wants to go out on his terms, and he certainly could do it in a spectacular way if they want it. And I think they've still got a great shot at winning a Super Bowl. I know people are a little disappointed in the start, but when I watch this team play, I see a team that's not firing on all cylinders, that really is beating themselves in a lot of ways, a lot of self-inflicted wounds. We talk about the penalties, busted coverages in the secondary, just things that are not characteristic of a New Orleans Saints team that I know, because the talent's there, the leadership's there, and the coaching's there, I know they're going to get those things corrected. So I think actually this could be a team that's ascending toward the end of the year and not peaking too soon like I think they've maybe done in some past seasons.
Go ahead, Bob.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. Jeff, you talked about several people being a little bit perhaps disappointed in the Saints 3-2 start. And like you said, I couldn't agree more. I think that they've been beating themselves, especially on the defensive side of the ball and in the secondary. But since this is what your book is about, let's focus on the offensive side. What do you see with the Saints offense right now, fundamentally, that maybe Sean Payton and Drew Brees could change, especially into this bye week? Or is it just a simple matter of just what you said? Yeah, they've been missing Michael Thomas, and they aren't quite firing on all cylinders yet.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of everything going wrong. It doesn't take a lot with this offense for things to kind of get off, because they rely so much on timing and anticipation in the passing game that when you throw an element like Mike Thomas, you take that out of the mix, suddenly there's like a domino effect, and you got a lot of guys filling different roles, and it throws things off. And we've seen lately, the last 3 weeks, I think, them start to kind of get on the same page. Certainly Emmanuel Sanders is getting on the same page with Drew Brees. I think people forget. I mean, they've scored over 30 points 3 straight weeks without Mike Thomas. That's pretty good, you know. I think we've all been a little spoiled, too, about how easy the Saints have made offensive football look. Drew Brees makes it look a lot easier than it is. And so when we see him now drop back and you see him double pump, right, or not throw right away, right on cue, we've all seen it now for 15 years, almost through osmosis. We're like, what's going on? How is it not just a well-oiled machine? And so I watched the game again this morning. It's the third time I've watched that Chargers game, and there were so many plays that they dialed up, big shot plays downfield that just didn't materialize for one reason or the other. One time a guy just stumbled out of his break and didn't get off the ball. You know, these little things that could have been a 40 or 50-yard game, and Drew Brees mentioned that after the game, that they're just, you know, a hair away from really, you know, I think breaking out on offense. But I do think I think their running game is on track to be one of the better running games they've ever had. I think Latavius Murray is having a great year, very overlooked role in this offense. When they give him the ball, good things happen. Alvin Kamara has been spectacular. We're seeing Sanders come on. Cook, obviously, is a big factor for this team. And when Mike Thomas comes back, I do think they've got an opportunity to really take off. And they, as long as they can continue to have balance and not getting these behind the chains and these long, obvious passing situations that have hurt them with penalties and some negative plays. They've had more negative plays this year, guys, than I remember them having. They've always been kind of good at staying ahead of the chains, but they've had some of these plays, and maybe you're alluding to some of that, Bob, is that, you know, the Taysom Hill package, every once in a while, all of a sudden it's 2nd and 13 with a loss. And that's hard to overcome sometimes, especially with the way the Saints like to operate. So I'm painting kind of a rosier picture than probably a lot of people, you know, feel by watching them play. But I also think they played some teams that I think are a little better than we all thought. When I looked at the schedule, I thought this easy part was going to be the early on. But I think, you know, I think the Raiders are better than a lot of people thought. Green Bay is playing lights out right now. And the Chargers, coming in off that loss, they played very well the other night. They've got a very talented team, even though they were missing a lot of their key players. They've got some dudes on that defense that I was very impressed with. So I do think this team is not found itself on offense yet, but it's slowly finding their identity. And I think Brees is playing better than people think. I think people expect him. Their expectations are so high. But when I watch the game again, I see exactly that he's going to the right guy almost every time.
Yeah, and I think you're right. We are spoiled, and we do want to see the big plays and that offense click like this, all on all cylinders. But I think also you mentioned the running game, and I kept emphasizing this the past couple of weeks, how the running game should possibly be more emphasized than it really has been. Do you think there's a sort of impatience there with Coach, because he is a former quarterback, like you said, and he does have a future Hall of Fame quarterback? Do you think it's some of that he's not going to stick with the run as long as he's capable of doing it, especially when we've seen the run game work early on in the games?
Well, I think there's a little of that, but I think it's more complicated than that. I mean, the Saints offense, a lot of it is really run by Drew Brees. I mean, Sean Payton calls the plays, but they've gotten to the point now, guys, where, you know, a lot of their plays are called in the huddle with 2 options, a run pass option. And Drew Brees, when you hear him, we can hear him now in a lot of these games where he's yelling, kill, 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 right? He's going to the second option dictated by what the defense is giving them. They go to the line of scrimmage, they see what the defense, how they align, and then Drew makes the decision to get them in the right play, whether it's run or pass. So a lot of times the Saints are just taking what the defense gives them, and they feel that their offense is sophisticated enough to take advantage of a quarterback with his experience to make those checks at the line of scrimmage. So, you know, a lot of times Sean Payton might have a run called and the defense lines up heavy in the box. They're going to go to the pass every time in that situation. And usually they're going to be successful. I just think this year they've been a little off in some of their pass protections. It's not been as strong as I thought it would be. and teams are playing them very well. I mean, when you have an offense as prolific as the Saints, a lot of teams spend a lot of time game planning for them, and that's been one of the remarkable things. They've been able to stay ahead of opposing defenses, and that's why I think sometimes what we see in these games where the Saints start slow, what's happened is teams have such respect for the Saints, they throw stuff at them early that they haven't seen on game film because they know the Saints grind away preparing for what they're going to see from their opponent. The opponent will throw something at them that they haven't seen, and it'll take them a series or two to figure it out, and then they get on the sidelines, and then we see that offense start to click as they adjust. That's very common for this group.
Good. Now, I do have a question about the defense. Do you believe the secondary – we talked about the busted coverages. We talked about the fact that the secondary has been missing their assignments. Do you think it's just because they're missing Janoris Jenkins, or is it just that the Saints may need to look at bringing somebody else in before the trade deadline?
No, look, I just think they're not playing with a lot of confidence back there right now. They had swag in that first game.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Rabbit had that pick six on Brady. They made some big plays, Marcus Williams. And then they've somehow, with these busted assignments and miscommunication, I think they've all lost a lot of confidence. I don't think there's one player in the secondary playing up to their potential right now. I think they would all tell you that. And the miscommunication just really should not be happening with a veteran group like this. Most of this group's played together for a while. Malcolm Jenkins is really the only true newcomer in the group. And, they are playing P.J. Williams at safety now. So, you have to give him a little bit of slack. He's tried to make a transition to a new position, but they're just not coordinated on the back end. And it's leading to some huge mistakes, and it's costing this team. It's hounded them for 4 weeks now. They've got to get it under wraps. And I really believe this bye week, that's what Dennis Allen and his staff are going to do. They're going to try and figure out, do they need to play differently on the back end? Do they maybe need to play more zone? Do they maybe need to move some players around and get better play at the safety position? We always focus a lot of times on the corners because they're conspicuous, right? We see them on the ball, but the safety play has not been very good at all. No. And they've got to get better play by the back end there. And that's something I know Sean Payton has been emphasizing throughout the season. They've got to be better coordinated on the back end. Those are the center fielders that get them aligned in the right defensive scheme. And so far it's been really hit or miss.
Yeah, I was surprised Jenkins missed that interception, weren't you?
Yeah, right in his hands. And he's had a lot of plays this year where he's been just a hair away from making a big play, a sack here or there. It could be that he's, pressing a little bit because he knows there's a lot of pressure on him to kind of be that guy in their secondary. But I think they've got to get the back end solved. I think the rest of the team's going to come along. I think getting Davenport back, he made a couple of really impact pressures, even though in that game he didn't get a sack. His disruption of Herbert really prevented a big play from happening. There were a couple of times where guys got deep and got behind the secondary. If Herbert would have had time, it could have been another chunk play, but Davenport's pressure prevented it. So I think the front 8 is probably as good as they've ever had. The depth there, they really don't drop off a lot on the defensive line. And I think the linebacker play, now that Zach Bond's coming back, I like some of the things I saw from him. I think he's only going to get better with reps. But the back end, they just got to play better. And I think it could come down, guys, just to having a good game. I know that sounds simple, but getting their confidence back. Janoris Jenkins is a player that plays with a lot of confidence. Having him back healthy, I think, will go a long way and kind of create a domino effect in the secondary.
Man, well, I tell you this much, Jeff. I hope it rubs off on Lattimore because that last stop he made was outstanding.
Big time.
Phenomenal.
I still don't know how he did it. I watched it about 5 times. How he tackled that guy and kept him from getting the first down. That's a big dude. Mike Williams, like a tight end, showed a lot of strength.
But also, DeMario coming over the top, trying to punch away the ball. I thought he was going to propel him into the first down, but Marshawn kept him back, man.
Here's what I think was important for that. It was important, I think, for the defense to win a game where they walk off the field and they made the stop.
Yeah.
We've not seen that. That's been one of the biggest, you mentioned earlier, Kyle, about, the legacy of the Saints. I mean, how different would it be for Drew Brees and Sean Payton if the Minnesota Miracle wouldn't have happened, or if the Nola no call wouldn't have happened? And even despite the bad call, the defense still had a chance to end the game a couple times and couldn't do it. And then they couldn't last year. Even as bad as they played against the Vikings, the offense still tied the game.
Yeah.
And then they could not get off the field. They couldn't even prevent a touchdown at the end. That has killed this team over and over and over. We saw it last year against the 49ers, couldn't make the stop. We saw it against the Texans. I mean, they almost gave that Texans game away.
Mm-hmm.
Two 37-yard gains in 13 seconds.
Yeah.
It's egregious mistakes like that, and it almost happened Monday night. If the guy makes the field goal, we're all talking about yet again, how do they give up a 29-yard play in that situation? So it was important for them to make a big stop like that, Marshawn Lattimore, and for them to get a little confidence going in the bye week.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Bob wanted to talk to you about the Hall of Fame. And we know that you're one of the great voters of the Hall of Fame. One of my old colleagues at SI, Gary, he is one of the voters on the Hall of Fame as well. He used to give me a lot of trouble. But he said that being a part of the Hall of Fame is a prestigious honor, and I'm glad to know that we have you on the board. So go ahead, Bob.
Hey, Jeff, so many questions. I don't know whether to start with the process or what players should be in or could get in. So I'll just ask you about one of my favorite players since I was a kid. Why the heck isn't Pat Swilling in the Hall of Fame?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, I'm having a meeting this week with Greg Bensel, the Saints Vice President of Communications. We're going to try to put together a campaign to get Pat Swilling in. I don't know if we're going to be successful or not. Pat Swilling's numbers, I think, are certainly worthy, but getting pass rushers, guys like him in there, they have to be over the top. Kevin Green is an example. Kevin Green, it took him a number of years to get in the Hall of Fame. His numbers, certainly sack-wise, Chris Dolman, are more than Pat Swilling. So I think it's going to be an uphill battle, frankly, for him to get in. But I do think he's going to have a chance to at least get in the room as maybe a finalist in one of those final 15 or a semifinalist, and have a chance to, once you get that stage and you get a chance to make a presentation, it's almost like, and when I'm in the room making a presentation for a Saints player, you feel like an attorney making a case.
Yeah.
I've talked. Well, I remember having conversations with Morton Anderson about it. You really feel an obligation or responsibility to that player and their career and their legacy to try and present the best case for him to get in, his merits to get in the Hall of Fame. And I think what people don't realize about the process or about about the voters themselves is, it's not that people are saying a player is not worthy of getting in. It's that we can only put so many players in by the bylaws each year. And so there might be 12 of the 15 finalists that we believe are worthy of going in the Hall of Fame. Sometimes it might be all 15, but you can only put 5 in a given year. And then there's new players that come in every year that are eligible. This year, Peyton Manning's going to be eligible. He's going to be a first ballot. So that knocks somebody else down the list. So it makes it, the process sometimes is limiting for us and how we can get guys in.
Have they considered changing the bylaws as far as adding additional players? Since if you look at the NFL, the way it's trending, you have so many good, talented players who may get left out.
Yeah, I think they've kind of tweaked it over the years, but I don't think they're ever going to tweak it, the part of letting just 5 modern-day finalists get in a year. They want to keep it exclusive. They want to make sure it merits they owe it to the players in the past that went through the same process. They don't feel like they want to cheapen the process in any way, but it does make it hard. I think the hardest thing that I've learned in being a voter is just how difficult it is to compare players from different positions in different eras And they're all, let's face it, guys, when you reach that point, when you're a finalist for the Hall of Fame, you're the best of the best. There's no one that's not great. They're all, fantastic players. So you're comparing an offensive lineman, say, from the 70s to a wide receiver from the aughts. And they're both great, and they both dominated in their eras. So it's very difficult to say one's better than the other. It's really a lot of apples and oranges comparisons. And one of the analogies that I use is it's like a beauty contest. When you go to look at Miss Universe, they're all beautiful, right? I mean, in their own way, each contestant, and it's all sometimes in the eye of the beholder. No one's saying that these 15 finalists don't deserve to be in. It's just some deserve a little more than others. And so it makes it a very difficult process. And that's why that meeting lasts a full day. It's an exhaustive process. And I can assure everybody, we get a lot of criticism on the outside, but any player that's come into that room, and now we have 4 players, former players, and now we have Bill Polian on the selection committee, another general manager. Once they get in the room and they see the process, nobody's doubting or criticizing the effort, the amount of research, the amount of time, and the amount of, how unbiased it is. No one's in there. There's no bias from anyone. The voting process pretty much eliminates bias anyway, the way it's put together. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about how this thing is done.
Do we believe Sam Mills will ever get an opportunity to have a bust?
I think he's going to have an opportunity. Well, he's definitely going to have an opportunity. He's going to be on the ballot every year, and he's going to have a chance. But I think it's going to be difficult for him to get in. I mean, I made a strong case for him last year at the Super Bowl, and he didn't even make it into the top 10.
Right.
It was just difficult difficult because he didn't play on a lot of, he didn't play on any Super Bowl teams. He wasn't able to win at a high level, and that goes a long way in the room, right or wrong. Super Bowls matter. And unfortunately for Sam, as great a leader as he was, as great a player as he was, he had the misfortune of not ever making it to a Super Bowl. And I think it's a shame because if you talk to his teammates, anybody that coached him, including Jim Mora, and Bob, you brought up Pat Swilling, on record, Jim Mora has said Sam Mills is the best player he's ever coached. And that includes Peyton Manning, who's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That speaks volumes to me about Sam Mills.
And I think you bring up a great point. Just about everybody, realizes this, that rightly or wrongly, Super Bowl championships or number of Super Bowl championships matter. And I agree with you. I think that's what's held both Sam and Pat back, and probably Jim Mora too, in the selection opportunities. But now we're talking about more recent players, and like you pointed out, you have so much new talent and new eligible players being eligible every year that kind of knocks the veterans, the grizzled old guys down the peg a little bit. But talk to us about the Payton Brees regime. I think Sean Payton's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Drew Brees is a Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt. But what other players can you see coming out of this Payton Brees era and potentially being Hall of Famers? And does only one Super Bowl championship hurt their cause?
Well, I think it's definitely still up in the air on Sean Payton, even though I think he belongs in there. I think he's probably going to have to get back to another Super Bowl for sure to get in. Look at Tom Flores. He's won 2 Super Bowls, and he still has not gotten in. So there's a lot of coaches like that are struggling, even though their resumes probably aren't overall as strong as Sean's. And I think he will get back at some point, whether it's this year or not, and get in to the Hall of Fame. Drew Brees is going to be a no-brainer. I'm not even going to have to make a case for Drew Brees. I'm probably just going to have to say his name, and we'll move on. That's what we did with Brett Favre, save the process. But to your point, Bob, I think Jari Evans is going to have a strong shot. His resume certainly stacks up with some of the great offensive linemen of his era. I tell you what goes a long way towards Hall of Fame worthiness, and that is making the all-decade team. That in the Hall of Fame selectors' minds, that means you were the best at your position for a decade. It's actually the argument that I think finally got Morton Anderson in. He was first team all-decade at the place kicker position twice, 2 different decades. 20 years in the NFL, he was the best kicker. And there's only been 5 two-time all-decade first-team selections other than Morton Anderson, and they were all first-ballot Hall of Famers. That goes a long way. If you make the all-decade team, that means you were the best in the league at that position. So things like that, I think, will go a long way toward getting guys in. But I don't know if anyone else has a chance. Marcus Colston's not even eligible because he never made the Pro Bowl. He never made All-Pro. Those things are part of the requirements to be on the ballot. Even he's not even on the ballot, even though Marcus certainly was a better player than some of these other players who might have had 1 year where they were spectacular and made the Pro Bowl and they're eligible to be on the ballot.
Wow.
Yeah, that's deep. Okay, Jeff, before we let you go, let's talk about any surprise players thus far you see on the Saints team that people need to keep their eyes open for.
Yeah, great question, Kyle. The guy that comes to mind right away was just after I watched the tape this morning. I think Marquez Callaway I think his role is going to start expanding. Yeah. He opened my eyes, not just in the receiving game, but also returns. He made something happen on returns. I mean, those were overlooked plays, those 10, 12-yard returns, made a difference in field position, but also he showed some moxie. And the fact that Drew Brees and Sean Payton, after the game, mentioned him by name, that always opens my eyes. I've covered these guys long enough to know when their name is mentioned unsolicited sometimes, that means that they've made an impact. I remember distinctly hearing Drew Brees mention Joe Brady a bunch of times a couple of years ago, and I was like, who's this Joe Brady guy? That Drew Brees keeps mentioning. Well, now we all see who Joe Brady was. Marquez Callaway, I think, has got a big shot to have a expanded role, and I think bring something to this offense that they haven't had. He's got some speed. I like the way he has a feel for the position. And so I think they may have a find there, another find at the receiver position. And the fact that Drew was throwing to him in some critical situations, I think speaks volumes of the confidence that they have in him.
Yeah. What's your thoughts about the young guy, Malcolm Roach?
Oh, yeah. No question about it. It's another guy. I think he opened my eyes in the first game. I mean, he's a disruptor, incredibly quick for a guy his size. Reminds me a little bit of a poor man's Leroy Glover. I'm going back a ways, Kyle. You might remember Leroy Glover, but he was a guy that was undersized at the position, but was incredibly athletic and can slip through the cracks of a double team block. Roach has got that explosiveness. They're in really good position on the defensive line right now. Unfortunately, I think they're so good there that a guy like Sheldon Rankins is probably going to be moving on because they've got such depth and they've got so many other players that they have to pay. Ryan Ramczyk's coming up, Marshawn Lattimore, and we can go down the list. These are going to be big ticket items. And guys like Rankins, who I know they really like and they respect, he's a great teammate. He played very well against the Chargers the other night. Yeah. But you've got young guys like Shai Tuttle and Malcolm Roach that are on rookie contracts that are productive, good players. And unfortunately, there's a numbers game there, and sometimes you go with the young guy.
Good stuff. Bob, any last questions?
Just one more, Jeff. What do you – and you already mentioned him by name, and I really like what I saw from him. He was one of my favorite players in the draft, but I really like what we saw from him on Monday. Do you see some big things for Zach Bond in the second half of the year, or is this sort of a redshirt year where we're just going to see a little bit from him during his rookie season?
Well, I think they want to get him involved in the pass rush. I think that, that's what he excelled at Wisconsin, and they didn't really use him the other night at all to rush the passer. But I like the way he set the edge on the run. I mean, that wasn't something that he was known for at Wisconsin, and he did a good job there the other night. He's an incredibly athletic guy, a very smart guy, and we saw Demario Davis make a couple of really nice pressures using the blitz. So I think they'll get him involved in those, passing situations, the NASCAR package that they like to use in pressure situations. And I think he could make an impact because he brings an element to that second level as a pass rusher, maybe a stand-up guy, hybrid guy off the edge. We like to call him a joker, right? You can move him around as a chess piece. But that's a lot for a young guy. And I think right now they just want him to stick it, Sam. Let's get your feet wet, and they'll expand that role gradually. Similarly, maybe the way C.J. Gardner-Johnson's role. You remember last year? I mean, he wasn't making an impact early on. And every week it seemed like they gave him a little bit more. And by the end of the year, he was a key playmaker for him. I could see Zach Vaughn progressing the same way.
Okay. We have one question from Paul T. Jeff, how much of this game is mental?
Oh, gosh. You guys were asking me earlier about the book, and that's one of the things I think that opened my eyes in doing the research on the book was just how much of this game is mental. And one of the reasons I believe Sean Payton and Drew Brees are so good and been so successful is because they're so smart and because they can process the mental workload it takes. Barty used with me, the term he used was they have extraordinary mental stamina. And what they meant by that is their ability to go in on Tuesday and break down film over and over and over and then process it and then take it to the field on Sunday where the pressure is on and Drew Brees is out there and things are moving at a mile a minute, so fast. And he's able to react and make the right, decision under that pressure. A lot of guys can't do it, and it's probably his greatest strength. And the mental workload that they put in from Monday to Sunday is ultimately why I believe they've been, historically successful here. And I'll just give you one last thing before we sign off. This was a great example of the attention to detail the Saints put into a game plan. Joe Lombardi told me that he gave me an example. He said, we might work for an hour on one running play that we're going to putting in a game plan. He said, we do that because of number 9. He said, Drew Brees wants an answer to every play we put in. He does not want to go into a game without an answer. And what he meant by that is he said there might be a given run that, say we're playing the Atlanta Falcons, and we may have a running play we're going to put in, and the Falcons might line up in 38 different defensive formations against that run. And he said we might have an answer for 37 of those running defenses that they could put in. He said we have to spend an hour coming up with an answer for that 38th, just in case it's run. He said most teams would just say, you know what, if that comes up, that situation, we're just going to run it and we'll get a 1-yard gain and we'll live another day. He said that's not going to fly with Drew Brees. And that's taught me a lot about the standard that Drew Brees sets for everyone in the building. He raises the standard for everyone. He's not going to accept being 37 out of 38. We've got to have an answer on all 38 situations, and that puts pressure on the coaching staff to spend an extra hour on a run that they might not even call in the game. And if they do call, more than likely they're going to have an answer 37 out of 38 times. That's just a good example of the mental capacity it takes to play, at least here in New Orleans, with Drew Brees and Sean Payton.
Jeff, I'm going to need you to repeat that to Bob, John, and the rest of my team when I'm asking them for answers and give me answers. They can't give me any reason why they decide to write certain stories. So, but we'll come back to that later, man. But anyway, Jeff, tell me this. I mean, after all the years of covering the team, and I'm pretty sure you had opportunities to go elsewhere or become more nationally prominent. Why stay and cover this team? What was it so unique about the Saints that you remained here in New Orleans covering them?
Well, it's more than just the Saints, I would say, Kyle. I mean, I love New Orleans. I love the city. I loved working at the Times-Picayune. It's the best place I've ever worked. A lot of great journalists there, a lot of great people that I respected. So I had a great job in a great city in what I consider to be maybe the best sports town in America. I mean, it's not just the Saints, which are incredibly successful, but also a very passionate fan base that follows them, that reads everything you write. So everything's relevant. But we also have, an incredible NBA team here. We have a flagship university right down the road with a top flight, football program, successful basketball, baseball program. We get Super Bowls here, NBA All-Star games. The Sugar Bowl is a huge national platform. national championship football games, Final Fours. We punch above our weight class here in New Orleans for the size of town we are. And I have colleagues all over the country that are envious and jealous of the job I have and the platform I have here. And I've worked in a lot of places. I've worked in Washington, D.C. I worked in Tampa. I grew up in Louisville. I worked there. I worked in Nashville. So I've had the experience of and the perspective of what it's like in other markets. So I value working in New Orleans, and it's such a great lifestyle and culture here. So unique. The European influence, it makes it the most distinctive and unique city in America. So, and then also I think the New Orleans Saints, just the passionate following that I mentioned, it's hard to go somewhere else. It would have to be an incredible opportunity. I've had a lot of opportunities to leave, but there's nothing that's, lured me away. And then when this opportunity at the Athletic came along, it was the best of both worlds. It's a national platform, but I get to cover it like a local reporter. We're kind of a hybrid. If you go to our website, we have coverage of European soccer leagues, the Premier League, the Bundesliga. We're going into cricket and rugby, but you can also get all the local news here because we have a team of 6 journalists that cover everything on a local level. So I think it's a perfect situation, and I feel blessed and grateful to have that opportunity.
Wow. Well, we're blessed to have you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, Kyle.
Yeah. Look, before we sign off, one last thing. Anything the people need to know, sell the book. Tell us how we can get it, where to go, what's going to happen next. I know you have a couple of signings coming up as well, right?
Yeah. So if you're in New Orleans, next Tuesday night, we'll be doing a virtual signing at Garden District Books. So you can go online there. Good friend of mine, Fletcher Mackle, the sports director at WDSU, is going to moderate that. We're going to talk a lot about the book. You can order it online right now, guys. I mean, it'll come on your doorstep tomorrow through Amazon or Triumph Books, the publisher. It's in local bookstores now. It just got released yesterday to the local booksellers all over the country. And then there's a unique opportunity if people want to go online to the Payton and Brees Facebook page. We have a team here that's putting together a package of books where I can get out authors' copies, signed copies. I can personalize a signed copy. If you want a signed copy, say for a gift to somebody, you can go on the Payton and Brees Facebook page, and there's opportunity there to have a chance to get a signed copy. And I can we're shipping those out as well here over the next week. So lots of opportunities to get your hands on. And I really believe this. I think people will learn a lot about the team and even have as much as everyone's read about Drew Brees and Sean Payton. And I knew a lot about them, covering them as long as I did. I still learned a lot in putting together this book. And I think fans and readers will as well. There's just so much there that I didn't know about. And I really felt honored to be able to write this story and privileged that Sean Payton and Drew Brees both signed off on it and participated in it and, kind of gave it their blessing.
Man, it's awesome. I can't wait to read it. I can't wait to get my signed autographed copy from you. Tell everybody how they can find you on the World Wide Web.
Yeah, my Twitter handle is at Jeff Duncan _. You can follow me there. I'll be linking everything as well. And then you can go to The Athletic. We got an unbelievable deal right now for new subscribers. And I say this totally not being a huckster, but I mean, it's $12 a year, guys, for new subscribers, $1 a month. It's really remarkable. And you get Catherine Terrell, who's covered such a great job covering the team for us. Larry Holder has covered the team. Between Larry and myself, I mean, we've covered the team for, I think, 35 years. So we've got a lot of experience that we can draw on. That makes us old, I know. But you can also find my work as well on my Facebook page. I link everything there. And then one last little plug. If you're here locally, I'm an analyst also at Fox 8. I just came back from doing our final play in overtime broadcast, recording that with the great guys over there, Juan Kincaid and Sean Pazan. Do a great job covering the Saints, along with a guy you all know, Deuce McAllister, who's also an analyst there. So a lot of irons in the fire right now, but it's great to be busy, and it's great to see the Saints getting some wins. It's always more fun to cover a winning team than a losing one.
Definitely. Jeff, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, guys, thanks for the invite. I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed talking football with you, and love the opportunity to be able to tell people about the book. I really hope everybody gets a chance to get their hands on it because I think they'll enjoy it.
Definitely. No, I can't wait to read it. Read the book. I'm looking forward to that. I've been reading your stuff for years, couple decades now, and frankly, if I could be a bit of a flag waving fan, your work is a lot of what I've modeled my own work after. As people like Kyle have given me a chance. So thank you for being a model for everybody, and it's certainly a journalistic figure in the New Orleans community.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it, guys. Really, thanks for the opportunity tonight, and let's do it again down the road soon. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Sure. Thank you. Take care, Jeff.
Okay, guys. Thanks again.
Take care. Bye. All right, guys, that was Jeff Duncan of The Athletic. Go ahead and go out and buy his book, Payton and Brees, The Men Who Built the Greatest Offense in NFL History. Okay, Bob, any quick takeaways?
Jeff said it all, and he's the kind of guy that you and I could talk to literally all night, about football, Saints, and we only delved a little bit into the history of the team beyond Payton and Brees, and he was still just a wealth of knowledge. Love Jeff's work. I always have, and I truly can't wait to read his book.
Yeah, definitely. I know a couple of you guys were asking about what's his website and everything else. It's not on the website, but you can go to Amazon.com to be able to get the book. I know his publisher has a different way of going about getting the book, but if you're on Facebook, go to his Facebook page.
Yeah.
He has a link in his commentary just the past couple of days where you can be able to purchase the book, and I think you can Venmo him and get him to have a signed autograph copy for yourself. Okay. So if you have any questions later, you can always hit myself or Bob up. Mm-hmm. I can see if I can be able to get that special link just for you guys to be able to purchase his book. Okay. All right, Bob, the Saints are sitting at 3-2. Right now they have the leg up on Tampa Bay and Carolina, who are also at 3-2. The Saints are still classified as first in the division by a slight margin. The next game the Saints will play will be in week 7 against the Carolina Panthers, when Teddy Bridgewater, or should I say Teddy Two Gloves, will come back to New Orleans and play. We don't know. I forgot to ask Jeff this. Will it be the Tiger Stadium, or will it be inside the Mercedes-Benz Superdome? That's a good question, and we'll try to hash that out in the near future as well. It doesn't look like American Trail is going to budge on her stance, so it may be Tiger Stadium, So, Bob, here's the question. We heard Jeff. We heard him say iron out some things in the secondary that's been plaguing the Saints. Anything else should the Saints be concentrating on?
Gosh, yeah. And Lord knows we're going to cover them ad nauseum. Through our works, yours, mine, John's, Brendan's at the Saints News Network. The secondary, like Jeff pointed out, is probably the biggest issue that I'd like to see the team work on. The coverage breakdowns are inexcusable. The boneheaded penalties have crippled the team and almost cost more than just 2 losses. But more so than that, the team has an opportunity to get healthy. Mike Thomas is coming back. Andrews Peach should be coming back. Janoris Jenkins will be coming back. But on the offensive side of the ball, and we've heard Coach Payton allude to it after almost every game this season, at least outwardly, Sean has been his own biggest critic as far as the play calling, and particularly on third downs. And folks, before the end of the week, I am personally doing a piece on the Taysom Hill angle, how he does fit into this offense, how he has fit into this offense. And I don't want to bury the lead, but it's just one of a handful of things that I would like to see the Saints work on offensively to kind of iron out the kinks. Getting Michael Thomas back will cure a lot of ills, but this team still has some things that we would all like to see them work on to be the kind of efficient New Orleans Saints offense that we've become accustomed to. And play calling, third down execution, and the way Taysom Hill has been used. And frankly, it's been a momentum killer. Oftentimes, Taysom has. God bless him. So there's a lot of things I would like to see the Saints iron out on the offensive side of the ball. And not only do the coaches need to go back to the drawing board in some situations, and they always do during a bye week, but a lot of these players have to look at themselves in the mirror and begin to take accountability, for their slow starts. And when I say that, we've started to see Cam Jordan. He's really seemed to hit his stride. Certainly, Emmanuel Sanders has played brilliant football in the last 2 weeks. But Jared Cook has gotten off to a little bit of a slow start. Saints interior offensive, things like that on both sides of the ball. And penalties. We need to see them clean up their area of play as well.
Okay, those are good things. We're going to also talk a little bit more about, not talk, but write about what's happening with the Saints and Michael Thomas situation. I think there's something else behind the scenes, but hopefully that could be clarified pretty soon. The message has been received, so to speak. But also we will give you guys a little bit of a breakdown on the secondary coverage. I heard John Koskas from Pro Football Focus talk about secondaries on Sirius Satellite earlier this morning, and he has some good numbers to be able to share. Some of the teams who are at the top has some of the worst secondaries, and that's interesting because he feels going forward some of the worst secondaries are going to be the detriment of those teams at the top, like the Raiders and Chiefs and those guys like that. Okay. All right, guys. Bob, tell everybody how they can follow you on the World Wide Web.
Well, first of all, I want to thank all of our viewers for joining us tonight. I know we've been a little inconsistent in our appearances over the last 2 weeks, so we appreciate your patience. Definitely want to thank Jeff Duncan again for joining us. Jeff, Kyle and I have always loved your work, and can't wait to do this again. As far as my work and myself, I can be followed on Facebook. Just look for Bob Rose. Over at Twitter, I am at BobbyR2613. Obviously, all of my media work comes directly through the Saints News Network and SI.com, the Saints team channel. But we also post off on our personal sites and the Bayou Blitz Facebook group and Facebook page. We have gotten some great feedback off of that Facebook group. If you aren't already a member, what are you waiting for? We want you to be a member of the family.
Come on down.
Come on down. It's a really interactive group. We give everybody a sneak preview of our articles, on that group before we populate them through the rest of social media. And like I said, we have a great team of administrators that make Kyle and my job a lot easier. And they're no bullying in there, just good fashioned football talk, conversation, and dialogue. So if you're already a member of the Bayou Blitz Facebook group, thank you so much for everything you do. And if you're not, come on down and join the family.
Yeah, come on down, join the family. But also, please do not forget to go to our YouTube channel and subscribe there. Our YouTube channel has been growing ever since the beginning of the season. I really like what we're doing. So go to our Saints News Network YouTube channel, and it's not to be confused with a young school that's up north called Saints News Network as well. But those some good kids up there. Talk to the principal. They're doing some really good stuff, but right now they are more virtual. All right, guys. I'm going to say this. I'm going to say it. Jeff Duncan, Mike Triplett, Larry Holder, all those guys who used to work together at the Times-Picayune. Underhill was there as well with those crew. Those are some good talented guys, but we have some young talented guys that are behind them as well, with like Bob Rose and John Hendricks and those guys as well. And I think you're looking at the next generation of young columnists that you may need to be paying attention to. So I think those guys are Ross Jackson. I like Ross, what he's doing with Canal Street. You like Deuce with his analyticals and breakdowns with his videos. You like a lot of these guys that one thing about the Saints News Network, we don't hate, we appreciate everybody. And I like to see more of young journalists and podcasters like Nader and Brian over at Sports Overtime, because I know how they originated with Big T, and we're good supporters of one another as well. So let's all in the Who Dat Nation take a pause and for the cause and know that we are on the same page and going in the same direction, baby. We want to see the team win, but we want to cover it from our own perspectives and different angles, and we do it well. So go to si.com/NFL/Saints for the latest in New Orleans Saints news from the Saints News Network on Sports Illustrated. This is Kyle T. Mosley. You can follow us at Twitter, Instagram, as well as Facebook at Saints News. You guys have a great evening. Bob, you have a great evening. Thank you, Jeff Duncan, for being with us tonight. Take care. Who dat, baby?